Good morning, everyone. It's truly a pleasure to be here. I have a mix of feelings now. I feel like in home. Now I can understand how young were the CDE fellows. And I want to start expressing my sincere gratitude to Tom, to all the staff, to the Jacobsson Foundation for giving me this opportunity to share with you some thoughts, some experience also. I'm not going to talk about my private life, but I will share some details also. In my case, CDE has a transformative impact on my life. I would like to start saying this. I prepared a presentation, don't worry, I'm not going to bore you with macroeconomics, numbers, or macroeconometric models. At least today, we will not see that. So I took both photos yesterday. And I divided this presentation in three parts. A brief overview. I'm going to talk a little bit about me, the transformative power of CDE, and my career post CDE. I don't know if you know about Peru. I was born in Peru, it's in South America. If you didn't hear too much about Peru, probably I'm pretty much sure that you hear about Machu Picchu and the best food of the world, probably. I'm not going to discuss that. Peruvian food is the best of the world. So I was born in the northern of Peru, a small city called Chimbote. It was a port where the main activity was the fishing and the production of fish meal. Unfortunately, things happen. I just spent very few years in Chimbote. I could recover some photos during my times. Because Chimbote, unfortunately, every 5-6 years, the time can change, but it's affected by natural disasters. I don't know if you hear about the phenomenon El Niño, but it's a dramatic natural disasters, strong floods, heavy rains. And that's the reason why my family, these are original photos of the phenomenon El Niño. This happened in Chimbote, especially in the north of Peru. And then 1982 and 1983 was one of the most dramatic for Peru. The Peruvian economy fell down more than 12%. It was a huge economic crisis. And that's the reason why my family, my parents decided they lost everything, home, job, and that's why they decided to go to the highlands, the hometown of my mother, Tarma. Probably you didn't hear about Tarma, just few pictures about Tarma. Tarma is known as the city of the flower, or as the pearl of the Andes. It's a small valley. I grew up there. I spent almost 17 years there. Studied my elementary school, secondary school, and I made the first part of my life in Tarma. Tarma is famous due to this, carpets made of flowers. You have the opportunity to go to Peru. I encourage you to go to Tarma, you are going to enjoy it. It's maybe 8 hours far from Lima, but you will enjoy this fantastic trip from the coast to the highlands and to the jungle. All this beautiful landscape, it just enjoys 8 hours. These are some photos that I could recover. I was skinny at that time, but I spent marvel years. I still have very, very nice friends in Tarma. And probably the same happened to you. I wanted to study university. Unfortunately, Tarma at that time had not a university, so I took the decision, with the support of my parents, to go to Lima to study. I think that this was an important change of my life. You know, Lima is a big city, more than 10 million of persons, very big, very intimidating, a little bit dangerous, but happily. At that time, I wanted to study affairs related to technology. I like also read a lot, so I like story, I like history, economics, so happily, after studying a lot, I could attend to the National University of Engineering. If you want a comparison, it's like MIT, but in Peru. Very difficult. The exam, I had to take 3 exams: maths, physics, chemistry, verbal reasoning. But I think this was an important milestone. Leaving Tarma to go to Lima, looking for better opportunities. It was my case, and it's probably the case of many people and students in the world. You know that before coming here, Tom asked me something. Please watch, I forgot the name, Abang Han, sorry for the pronunciation. Watch the Abang Han presentation. I love her presentation. And she said something that is true. There are some particular moments in your life that can change it completely. And one of that moments in my case was when I attended to a conference of a former alumnus of my university. He was working at that time at the Central Bank of Peru. Now he's working at the Fed here. And he talked me about the summer course of Central Bank. He talked about how to accede to the Central Bank, the most prestigious economic institution. And at that moment, I feel very deep that I wanted to go to Central Bank. And I decided to prepare with the target to enter to the Central Bank. This special moment changed my life. It was a very tough course. Just to give you an idea, every year more than 1,000 students apply. From these 1,000 students, only 40 are selected. These 40 guys take a course of 3 months, very intensive in macroeconomics, econometrics, microeconomics, monetary policy. From these 40 guys, just 5 are selected. Happily, I was in the top 5. Maybe that was the reason that I had some quantitative abilities when I came here, but I learned a lot in CDE. Central Bank taught me a lot. I learned, it was like a dream, when a dream come true. Because when I was a student, I used to read papers of famous Peruvian economists, and working with them, it was I cannot describe that sensation, that feeling of emotion, that kind of happiness. I remember teachers and colleagues, Zenon Quispe, Adrián Arma, Renzo Rossini, very famous Peruvian economists, that I used to read when I was a student and work with them. It was fantastic at that time. Something that I learned a lot during my years in Central Bank was about the monetary policy. It's different. It's very similar in some aspects with what we read, but in the practice it's more interesting. I was promoted very fast. I started preparing statistics, monetary statistics, calculating the money, working with balance sheet of the banks, and happily, I found that the banks were trying to evade the reserve requirement. They were doing some traps. They were moving to foreign banks, but the fact was they are overpassing the central bank regulation. I had less than 7 months in central bank, and I discovered that operation When I talked with my boss, he didn't believe that. No, are you sure? Yes, Guillermo, yes, Guillermo, I was sure. And I went with the chief economist, with the general manager, and yes, that thing that I discovered was real. Central bank took immediately measures to avoid that issue. And that, I think that was the reason why I was promoted so fast. I passed from preparing statistics to the core of the central bank, that was that monetary policy design department. And something fantastic for me was the financial crisis 2008, 2009. I had just finished university, but I was preparing reports for the board, for the president. I was monitoring that crisis in real time, and this was a fantastic opportunity for me. You know that this crisis was a structural change for economics. The economists remember that we need to think about financial system, how important it is. The tools of the central bank also changed. We heard more about, for example, things about forward guidance, quantitative easing, trap of liquidity. It was like a conceptual revolution for the monetary policy. And I was in the core of central bank, learning of my colleagues, preparing a report. That was a fantastic experience. Three things that I learned of that experience was the importance of prevention, credibility, and coordination. Prevention, it's important. Acting before risk materializes is always cheaper than reacting later. Something very important. Credibility, trust is lost quickly. Keeping it requires discipline and consistency. And in a crisis, it's always important the coordination. Central banks, Minister of Economy and Finance. And that things that I learned at that time were very useful when I had to face an enormous crisis some years later. There were also fantastic lessons from 2008, 2009 financial crisis, the importance of the regulation, the importance to limit the leverage. If I could describe my stance in the central bank, I remember that phrase of my boss: the perfect is the enemy of the possible. What means that? The things can be not perfect. The importance is do it and do it fast, especially in a crisis. During those years of central bank, actually, I think it was in my first year, I met a fantastic person. Probably you know that person. That person came to Peru, I think 2008, 2009. He was explaining us about CDE, how relevant was CDE at William College in the United States, and all the opportunities that CDE could offer to the students. I liked his presentation. But Tom was very honest. He said that he was looking for students with some experience. He just, he told me, I remember his phrase, he was looking for someone that can share his experience in the CDE. Happily, I decided to apply some years later. It was very tough for me, especially because, as you can see, I still keep my Spanglish. But Tom helped me a lot. I remember he told me, Alex, take the jury. I got a good score, especially in math. I cannot share my results in language. And he told me, you don't have time for TOEFL test. I'm going to make you an interview. So I prepared for that interview. And happily, I don't know why, but Tom assigned me, and the committee also assigned me in CDE. And this is the second time in my life that I had this kind of special moment, this kind of turning point. I don't know if you watched the movie Back to the Future, where a situation can change your future definitely. In my case was attend to a conference and hear about the central bank. And the second turning point was the CDE. It had a transformative impact on my life. I took these photos also. I want to invite you with these pictures to enjoy this experience. It's fantastic from a different perspective, personally, intellectually. I recommend you take advantage of all the resources. Now, infrastructure is much better. Now you have more restrooms. That is something important. But this institution is amazing. You cannot. You will see in your classes. I'm very grateful with Professor Pedroni, Conner, Professor Montiel, Bacchia. Many of these classes I applied during my life. When I came here, I had other expectations of my career. I came here with the goal to get a good letter of recommendation, to apply a PhD program, and maybe spend some years teaching at top university after getting the PhD. But CDE transforming in what I am now, a policymaker. It gave me all the tools, very nice advice. The best advices of my life I received here, and I recommend you to take this experience. Attend to all your classes, attend to all the seminars. This institution has fantastic resources. It's tough. You're going to need to put a lot of effort. You need to study. You need to investigate. But it's going to be good for you. And I'm sure that it's going to be good for your countries too. I have some photos. I took Pedroni class. I decided for doing a thesis. I recommend you the tutorials now. You will not suffer like I suffered at that time. I lost a lot of hair. But I put this photo because I was with James Robinson, the guy who some years later to talk about his book with Acebaulo, the Why Nations Fail. That was something very interesting. It's just one example. Another fantastic example of CDE was in the commencement day, the last day in CDE. I met Billie Jean King, a famous tennis. I think it's the most famous woman tennis in US. And she said 3 things that I still remember. The first thing was relationships are everything. I not agree with that. Relationships are very important, but relationships are not everything. But I was completely agree with 2 things that she said that day, and I took it seriously. 1, never stop learning. You can learn from experience, you can learn from professors, you can learn from a question. And the second, that is a recommendation also for you, is always try to be a problem solver. So when I came back from CDE, that was my main idea. Try to be a problem solver. Solve the issues of my boss, try to solve the issues of my country. And post-CDE, life was very nice with me. I cannot give you too much details. Tom actually said. I got a family, a beautiful child, but also professional life was easier for me. I was promoted 3 times in 9 months. I think it's a world record. We should call to Guinness now. I remember I came back to Peru as economist. 1 month later, I was senior economist, then head of projects, then head of Department of Monetary Statistics, Department of Leading Indicators. It was a fantastic part of my life, professional life, because I always try to be a problem solver. I always to solve issues, not create issues. Or if I had an issue, come with my boss with a solution. That was very important for me. I spent 5 years after I came back from CDE. And in the 5th year, I feel that I was in a comfort zone, very comfortable zone with a beautiful landscape, a very good salary. But I had I came from Tarma, I went to Lima, so I wanted to look for new scenes. And that's why I decided to change that job. I was looking for opportunities. Sometimes you're lucky that you can find an opportunity in LinkedIn, in Facebook, or through contacts. Or sometimes you can take decisions, and I decided to write an email to the Vice Minister. That time, I didn't know him. I say, hi, Vice Minister, I'm Alex Contreras. I talk about my experience in Central Bank, in CDE, and I say I'm looking for new opportunities in the Ministry of Finance. And I was so lucky that he called me 2 weeks later for an interview. We talked more than 1 hour about macroeconomic situation of Peru, the impact of external shocks, what should be the response of the Minister of Finance, and he designated me as chief economist, and that's how I left the central bank. Happily, Central Bank was so nice with me that they offered me a license. I decided to take that offer, and I went to the Minister of Finance. It was another important milestone. As Tom mentioned, I was chief economist, then I was vice minister, and some years later, minister. It was a fantastic experience. I would say that this experience in the Ministry of Finance was like the conclusion of the first part of my career. The part of my life, of my professional life, where I put in practice all what I have learned in the last 10 years. And some strong experience, some sad experience was the pandemic. I think the pandemic was the toughest challenge of my life, both personally, professionally. Just to give you an example, check the numbers of Peru. It was a national tragedy, and at that time, I was part of the team that had to respond to face the pandemic. I was the main advisor of the minister, of the vice minister, and I could say of the president. In times of crisis, you need to react fast. At that time, I was chief economist. I was in charge of, we tried to help the Minister of Health because, unfortunately, we had one of the most weak health systems in Peru, and that's why we faced this national tragedy. You can see we had to close our economy. Can you imagine a contraction of GDP of almost 40%? It was not just a social tragedy, it was an economic tragedy. If you compare, for example, Peru with the rest of the countries of the region, the crisis was dramatic, and we had to face it. We had to prepare, we had to act very fast. And that was what we made. We designed the biggest plan in the whole history of Latin America in terms of GDP, almost a plan of almost 20 points of GDP. Happily, despite the sad fatalities, the economy recovered very fast, thanks to these plans, thanks to the measure that we took. At that time, you can imagine that I was in charge of the reopening of the economy. When the government decided to close the economy due to the COVID-19, they just do it. They didn't have a methodology. And one of my main challenges was how to reopen the economy, trying to, looking for equilibrium between the economy and the health. That was, I learned a lot of that experience. And discovered two important things. One is that always we heard that the public service is very important, that can help to improve the life of people. But also, what I learned during the pandemic was the public service can save life. Money, I'm proud of that. Many of the decisions that we took at that time saved life, many lives, saved many jobs, saved many enterprises. And many of the decisions that I took during that time, I learned in the backyard course, in Montier's course, in Kutner course. I remember when we had to design a cash transfer program in just 5 days. Or for example, when we created in just 3 weeks the first quantitative easing measure that was implemented in a developing country. That was the case of Reactiva Peru. It was, despite all the pain, despite all the sacrifice, it was an interesting opportunity. And something important that I also learned during that year was that economics is not just numbers of balance sheets. It's about well-being. It's about dignity. And I think we made all that we had to make to save the country. And that experience also it touched me a lot because one thing is working hard, but one thing is working with the risk to get the COVID-19. I used to work every day from Monday to Sunday from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m., no virtual. It was for me, even I could say traumatic driving in Lima, a big city that during the pandemic time converted in a ghost town. But we made all that we should have made. And unfortunately, we had to face other pandemic, maybe more perverse than COVID-19, a political pandemic, a dramatic political turmoil. This is a cut and paste of news. Can you read? 7 presidents in 6 years, from 2017 to 2022. So this was, I was in the Minister of Finance during the most part of that time, and it was very challenging. You know, for example, in 5 years, I worked with 10 ministers of finance. I was a survivor. I don't know why, but I worked with different kind of ministers, more lefty, more to the right, more to the center. But I always worked separating my political position, always thinking in my country, and I could survive. I worked in the Ministry of Finance. Actually, I was promoted in the middle of that turbulence. In December 2022, there was a coup. The president decided to close the Congress. So I was the first public official that resignated at that moment. I say to my team, I'm not going to work for a dictator. So I thought that my career in the Ministry of Finance would have finished at that time. I was preparing to, actually I took all my stuff from the ministry, all my COVID masks, even I had box, gloves, stress toys, all that stuff I took with me. And I received the call of the new president, the vice, due to that coup attempt, the Congress impeached the president, and there was a new president. She called me. She offered me the challenge to be Minister of Finance, and I felt ready at that time. I felt ready. I knew that the situation wouldn't be easy, but after pandemic, I say I'm ready for everything. And I was the Minister of Finance. When I say that CDE transformed my life, it's because I take CD with me. Can you see the tie? I always use this tie because CD means a lot for me. This time I'm going to buy a new one. Don't worry. Don't worry. More than 10 years, you can see this is a little bit old, but it's special. It's special for me. And it was very challenging time. Why? Because inflation was very high. Do you remember the Russian-Ukrainian war affected the inflation around the world? Also, due to that coup, there was a civil unrest during that period. Do you remember that I talked about the phenomenon El Niño when I was very child? It came back in 2023 when I was Minister of Economy and Finance. Always the natural disaster remember my past to me. But I had experience, I had the courage, I have the strength to work with my team, and we decided to launch a plan to face these different shocks. You will learn this in the Kodner class, with Montiel class. How can you expansive fiscal policy when the inflation is very high? You need to be very cautious. You need to calibrate the size of the fiscal space. Happily, we got our results. Central bank made its work with inflation, and we made our job trying to stabilize the economy. In that time, I developed new skills. I learned to negotiate with congressmen. I learned to talk with press. I learned also to be very strong. You know, I was close to put some cartoons about me, but I didn't have the copyright. But it was a fascinating experience. I spent 1 year and 2 months in the Ministry of Economy and Finance. And can you believe that I was the minister with the longest tenure of the last 7 years? 1 year and 2 months. The main lesson, yes, it's unbelievable, but I learned many valuable things during that time. First, the importance of believing in yourself. That's why I want to encourage you to study a lot, to learn a lot, to ask questions to your professor, to attend all the conferences, because if you know, you will gain more confidence in you. The second part that I recommend you, I'm sure that you will take this challenge in the future years, is always having a strong team. If you know that you are in the career, you are in the path to be a minister of finance, you need to think in your team. Alone is impossible, because you have to face different challenges, political challenges, sectoral challenges, and unfortunately, due to that political crisis, many important reforms were postponed. So I had to create a short-term agenda, but also a medium-term agenda. And maybe the third lesson is that your work has the power to spark new generations. I was very happy when I saw this photo. It was a parade of students from my school, and the students put a photo. I don't know if you recognize. And I was very happy because I feel that my work generates some transcendence in some people, and that was very valuable for me. Now I have a unique opportunity. I have the opportunity to talk with future policymakers of around the world, so I wrote some words thinking on you. First, some few words. Never forget your roots. It's something important that I learned. Growing up in the province taught me that policy is not about numbers. Policy is about people. Don't forget that. I want to recommend you also to act with courage. Crises don't wait consensus. Leadership is measured when the clock is running out. So it's important to be sometimes disruptive, to act fast, to think fast. Always lead with integrity. Trust is fragile. Once you lose, it's painful, hard to rebuild. Remember that. So when your moment comes, and it will, I'm sure, choose the hard, choose the necessary thing, choose people over applause, institutions over improvisation, integrity over convenience, choose the long term. If you remember only one thing from today, let it be this: the decisions that you make, the risks you take, and the values you hold can change not only your life, but the life of millions. Make them account. Thank you very much.
Alex, thank you so much. That was great. We're going to take some questions up now, if you're okay with that.
Yes.
And when you ask questions, speak loudly. We're recording this to share with CDE alumni around the world. So just speak loudly enough that we can pick up your question. Anybody want to be first? Why don't you stand up, say who you are, and then give your question.
Thank you, Tom. Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for your presentation about your career. My name is Kamal Derman. I am from Togo. I'm a project analyst. I work at the presidency of the Republic of Togo. And my question for you is about communication. Along my way, I heard and I learned from many people that being able to properly communicate is sometimes more important than being skilled in doing some things, because if you are skilled but you are not able to properly tell people about what you can do and what you can provide them, you won't be able to show your value and your worth and being able to progress in your life and your career. And I've heard a good example as well in your presentation about how you were able to tell your superiors when you found the problem in the central bank. And I was wondering if you think that being able to properly communicate, having good communication, helped you along the way in being able to progress your career and becoming the man you are today and making an impact in your country? Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question. I forgot to write that. Communication is very important. What you don't communicate don't exist. It's very important. Actually, I will rewrite my presentation, Tom, and I will send you, because that's true. Communication is very important. And I was a very technical guy. I spent many years in the central bank, so I tried to communicate in a simple way. I have to recognize that I made many mistakes also. Once, for example, I remember a story. There was a crisis about the price of lemon. The price of lemon was very high, more than the price multiplied by 10. And the journalist asked me, what do you think? I say, well, if the price is high, you can substitute with other goods. That is an economist's response. I was attacked due to that. And I had to apologize with all the restaurants the next day. And something important is communicate is very relevant, but also to learn to accept the mistakes. If you made a mistake, just apologize for that and continue. Only doesn't make mistakes who doesn't work. So the action generates mistakes. But you need to be enough humble to recognize that mistakes and try to repair it. That's why I encourage you, maybe in the path of your career, read more, learn how to speak in single terms. You know, the people in the markets, the sellers, they don't know about macroeconometrics or other stuff. That's why the communication is very, very important. And the honesty also. Thank you for that question.
That was great, a great question. Any others?
Professor Ra?
Sure.
Thank you very much, Alex. So my question to you is about trust in the government. You mentioned credibility and macro policy, but it just seemed to me with governments changing so often, there'd be real problems of trusting government policy that they've lost. And I wondered what your experience was, and maybe you could give an example of how to build trust in the government, especially in a time of crisis, time of change.
Thank you, Professor Wright. It's a pleasure to see you after a long time. I agree with you. Trust is very important. And the best way how to get trust is consolidating your credibility. For example, when there was a change of government, I was chief economist. There was a new government, and they decided to promote, because I was recognized by the markets, by the foreign investors. And it's something that, especially, not just in Peru, in the most part of Latin America, there is a crisis of lack of trust. The best way is, in my opinion, is act with courage, with principles, and also with the goal to communicate in the best way. You can say whatever you want to say. You can talk, you can give very nice speech, but the most important thing is the credibility. For example, something that I used to do for improve the expectations of the investor was announce, and few months, do it. Announce and do it. Announce and do it. When you are consistent, when you are persistent, when you do what you say, you strengthen the credibility, you strengthen the trust. Happily, in Peru, despite all the political turmoil, the economic institutions remain strong. If you check the numbers, now I'm working at the IDB, and many colleagues ask me about what is happening in Peru. You see, in one side, political crisis, many ministers of finance, many presidents, but very good levels of fiscal deficit, very low inflation, and a stable exchange rate. And the reason is the credibility and the institutionality, something that James Robinson and Darren Acemoglu said some years ago. That is why I did Professor Wright, to do it, announce and do it. Announce and do it.
Any more questions? I'd like to get somebody else before you ask your second. Tushin?
Yes, thank you. Hello, Mr. Alex again. I'm from Mongolia. I work at the Ministry of Finance. I believe that the Ministry of Finance is second the Prime Minister of the country, and it's like a very difficult and very responsible job, especially Ministry of Finance. Ministry of Finance have to overcome political pressure. My question is, you have worked in Ministry of Finance. Like, what do you think about the focus on tax generating and tax revenue?
Okay. Thank you for your question. Yes, when you are in the Ministry of Economy and Finance, you need to face you're going to face a more political scenario, more political pressures, especially from the Congress. And I had to looking for an equilibrium between the political needs and the fiscal stability. No? It's difficult, but in the long term, the fiscal stability is an important asset. And I think something important that I learned during that years was also, it depends on the way how you are. I used to be very close with the congressman. I used to talk in a very honest way. I didn't feel like a traditional politician. I was very honest. I say, we don't have money. We have limited resources. We cannot do that. But we could help in this way, or we could try to reassign the resources. That was the very challenging part, how to find a correct equilibrium. And during my tenure in the Ministry of Finance, the tax revenues fell down, just to give you an example, more than 12%. Even was this social unrest, these natural disasters generated a strong construction of the revenues. So I had the trade-off. I had to maintain the fiscal rule. That was very challenging for me because I knew that if I adjust the public spending strongly, I could have generated a more profound recession. So I decided to smooth the public expenditure. We didn't comply the fiscal rule, but there was a small deviation. But sometimes you are going to face this kind of challenges. You know what was the most difficult course that I took here? Was tax policy. It was a tough course for me because I was more macroeconomics guy, econometrics guy. I remember the lessons with Professor Gentry. It was so hard because I had other chip in my mind. But you know, some years later, I was leading a tax reform when I was vice minister. And that's a challenge of Peru, of many countries, how to increase the tax collection. It's not just about increase the rates, it's about how to create interesting ways and a culture for the declaration of revenues. I think we could use more the technology. But it's a challenge. Just to give you an example, the tax collection of Peru is one of the lowest in the world, 15% of GDP. We tried to pass a tax reform at that time. We got some additional revenues. Unfortunately, we didn't pass the complete reform. But remember when I say that use all the opportunities that CDE can offer you. I don't know if I answered your question.
But that's a helpful comment because we haven't expressed preferences for second semester courses. So keep that in mind. Normally we conclude these events in about an hour, so I think we have time for one more question. Okay, perhaps two if they're not too long. Go ahead, Neme, why don't you start?
Top, up to you. I can spend the whole afternoon talking with you. This is a fantastic opportunity for me.
Don't worry, you will, but you'll get some lunch while you're talking.
Okay.
Thank you, Tom. Please, among all the policies you have implemented as a minister, what is the one you are most proud of in terms of social impact, and how did you achieve it? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that question. You know, yesterday I had a nice dinner with Professor Montiel, Professor Bacchia, was Pedroni, Professor Gentry, Kudner, and Professor Kudner made me the same question. What was the nice part of being minister of the top moment? And you know, I after that question, I was thinking, and I think that the most important part of my career, not just like minister, like vice minister and chief economist, was the possibility to impact on the life of millions of persons. That power is amazing. More than the power of for example, have 10 security guards, international travel. It's nice. The travels are nice, the experience in the international forums, but when you see what your actions, what your ideas made, it's something priceless. That was the most, the nicest part for me. I'm going to give you an example. When I was a chief economist, the Minister of Economy and Finance called me. She told me, Alex, we need to talk with some enterprise and analyze the possibility to construct hospitals in a very short term to help the Minister of Finance. And I was thinking, I was more focused on the economy, so I was thinking, and I said, why we don't just, 1 year before the pandemic, Peru celebrated the Pan American Games, a kind of Olympic Games. So for that games, we construct fascinating infrastructure. We had buildings, apartments for the athletes, we had special fields, and I just thinking, I told her, to the Minister of Finance, why we don't use the Pan American Games infrastructure? We could put with the people, we could put all people that is infected. We have department, we have a huge space. We had collisions, and she took seriously my idea. She talked with the president, and 3 days later, the Minister of Health was using the Pan American Games infrastructure to put the people with COVID. That decision saved hundreds of lives. And this is an example of how single decisions can, especially in the public sector, can be so relevant for millions of people. That's the best part. And when you had the opportunity, remember this presentation. Act fast, act with courage, but also learning a lot of all your professors.
Okay, well that was a great example. Let's hear one more from Bernadetta.
All right, first of all, I should say thank you for a well-informative presentation. My name is Miranda from Malawi, an economist in the Ministry of Finance. So I'm just curious to know, how did you manage to balance the economic theory and the political influence when making policy decisions, considering the pressure that comes with the political influence? Thank you.
Thank you very much for your question. I always had my Montiers macroeconomic book with me. That was like my... you need to something that you need to understand is that textbooks try to simplify the issues. Reality is more complex. But theoretical framework is very important where you are going to take decisions. For me, for example, if I wouldn't have taken the course of Professor Bakia, I wouldn't have learned about the importance of cash transfers. We saw my class of macroeconomics here. I wouldn't have understand, for example, the importance of the measures of the central banks and the Minister of Finance. It's very important, I think, having a strong background, but also understand that in the implementation has its own details. You cannot be just a theoretical guy. You need to also learn about the sectors. Something that was very valuable for me was when I was in central bank, during my career after CDE, I was appointed as head of economic indicators department. Before that, I had knowledge about macroeconomic, how monetary policy and fiscal policy works. But that part of my career helped me a lot to understand, for example, how the different sectors of the economy work. I learned a lot about agriculture, about fishing, about the mining sector. And this knowledge, this specific, this more microeconomic knowledge helped me a lot when I was years later in the Ministry of Finance. It's very important to be familiarized when it's happened in the real life of the person. That's why I take this question to encourage you also to read your models, learn the BB curve, A curve, all the macroeconomic instruments, but also learn what's happening, what the countries are doing, what is the official reports of the Ministry of Finance, of the Central Bank, the WE of the IMF, what is producing the World Bank, what is producing the IDB, that can help you to have a comprehensive point of view respect to the issues of people. I think we're from developing countries. We're going to face strong challenges in the next year. We have important technological shocks. I have some divided position, for example, about the impact of AI in the economy, the natural disasters also, and how to construct in our countries a long-term agenda. Because due to that political turmoil that I was mentioned, this is something that I think it's important to discuss. I don't know in CDE, in other forums, how to propose long-term agenda in a world that is more dynamic, in a world that is more volatile, especially in contexts like our current context. Thank you very much. It was very nice to see you. I learned a lot of your questions, and I'm very happy to come back here, Tom.
We're happy to see you, and thank you for standing up before the class.